I love scrapbooking, but I just don't have the hang of layering. It looks so simple when others do it, but mine never looks right. I want to layer on my pages without worry. Glitter Gal, can you help?
Of course I can. Today I am going to create a layout with 2 photos I printed on a 5x7, so they're roughly 3.5 by 5, I think. And then a variety of supplies that are largely from the Starshine collection, and I try to use a variety of different products each week, but I know that this collection and most of my collections are all put together with a lot of layering in mind, so I hope you don't mind that it is going to be a great deal of Starshine supplies this week, so that I can just take you through step by step what I'm thinking when I put the different designs onto the page or the product, so that it will help you look at your product no matter what brand it is and see the same sorts of things. That's my agenda here. That's what I hope we can achieve. So I have a variety of different things, and I've pulled out quite a bit of gold metallic today. So I'll come back to that in a moment, but I'll show you the background and where we're going to start. Here are my 2 photos, and I wanted to use this mix of blue and orange to go with what's in the picture. So he's in blue, but the book he's reading is one of those books where everything is the same color and everything, and this particular book is orange. So I picked out this piece of paper because then I would have the option from either side. So I have my blue Starry Sky here. This is the paper called Curiosity, by the way. Or I have an orange and cream chevron. Now, the orange and the cream to me is not going to work with these photos because it's so close to the coloring of the pictures. I wanted to keep these pictures as this true color. Now, if you've seen some of the big monthly portraits I've taken of him when he was really small, these photos are taken in exactly the same place, but a different time of day, and obviously when I take the more formal portraits, the bed is made, and this is when he was just waking up. Now, because of the way our house is built, we have really big windows, and it means that the quality of the light, that's not really what I mean, the color of the light is what I mean. The color of the light changes throughout the day as the sun moves around, and also in the weather, if it's overcast, if it's sunny. And it's something that at first, when I first started taking pictures having moved here, I found it really annoying. And then the longer I lived here, the more I really liked keeping the changing color in the photos because it was more true to my experience. Now with those portraits, I could go in and I could adjust them so that all of the portraits would match and the color tones would be the same and the whites would all be the same, so that I could display them on the wall and it wouldn't distract that one day is overcast and one day is sunny. But this is not a formal portrait. This is a very candid moment, and I want to capture what it really looks like in the morning in that room. And that's the color of the light. It's very, very warm. So you might look at those photos and say, ooh, you could dial that down a bit and cool the color a little bit, and then it wouldn't look so warm. But to me, if I put it against the orange, then you really do notice how warm it is. If I put it against that contrasting blue, then it just looks soft. It doesn't look so orange. It doesn't look super warm. So I'm going to use the contrasting blue, and that means I'm going to use the orange in my embellishment just as an accent here or there. And it's that warmth of the photo is also why I've chosen to go with the gold metallic rather than silver. I have been using silver and kind of a pewtery color as accents with the Starshine collection because it picks up on the blues and the pinks as well. That pewter, it kind of can almost look purple in the light, and it works really well. But with a really warm photo, the gold works better in this, and something that's silver can actually clash a little bit because unless there's enough gray in the photo to make it work, it just looks like you've got kind of a gray next to a really orangey warm tone. And there are times when that can look absolutely right, but there are a lot of times when it can go a bit wrong. So in this case, warm photos, I'm going to go with the warmth of the gold. Okay, brandy strip's going to come off, and then I'm going to start these layers and share with you a few different things you can do to just have a really, really easy step-by-step guide to making layers a lot less difficult than you've made them in your mind. Starting with a vellum here, and this is a vellum that's actually from the Christmas collection, but works with all the star patterned things as well. And having different elements that are transparent will definitely help with layering. So that might be vellum, it might be watercolor, it might be washi tape, it might be clear stickers, anything that you can put on a page and still see the pattern underneath. Obviously that emphasizes the layers. It also emphasizes the fact that I've got a little bit of thread stuck here. So just remove that. Okay, and then I want to put my photos in a place where that glue, which I didn't really think about where I was putting the glue, where the glue is not going to show. And in this case, I think I'm going to run this one over this right edge a little bit. Now this is something that helps with layering as well. When you're placing your edges, don't place them flush together. Make sure you have at least 1 millimeter or 2 of overlap in, or so it comes over the edge or it lets some show. That will help so that you can see all those layers. In this case, I'm going to move it over so that you can see just a little bit of that star pattern peeking out behind. And now I'm going to look for the placement that I'm going to use with my embellishment layers. I want to choose 3 because that's what's easiest for me. And I'm going to give them a bit of grounding with some horizontal elements. There are a lot of circular and star-shaped elements going on here, but not a lot of straight lines. And that's what I want to create. So I am going to create one that goes right along here. So I have one large spot there. I'd like a small one up there at the top behind that photo. I want to make sure that that edge is on the page. I wanted to get this roughly in line with his eyes. Oh, that's close enough. It'll work. Doesn't need to be exact. And then I want a third one, but I'm not quite sure where that's going to go. So I'm going to imagine now where things are going to go on the page. So I'm thinking title and journaling in this space, embellishment here flowing down and around here, and here around this bit. So this bit is going to be full of other stuff, which means my logical places for a third strip would either be to run something flush to the top here, or along the top here or here. And I think what I'll do is put it here on the vellum, and it might be that this bit of embellishment runs down to the photos. But it gives me a bit more flexibility if I put it at the top of that vellum rather than start right on top of the picture, I think. So step 1 with my layered embellishment groups is to have something horizontal that's going to give me a grounding so that I can build on top, and even if I end up building down underneath, it's still giving me an idea of marking out the space on the page. This is where I'm going to put more stuff. That's basically what it's telling me. And you can think of it as a shelf. You can pile things on top of the shelf, or then you can imagine other things that if you're literally working with a shelf in your house, you could also have things that hang down from the shelf. You can have a plant that starts on the top and dangles underneath. You know, you can work with that idea of what could you do on an actual vertical wall and then apply it to your page. And basically the same sorts of rules apply. In using those things that would naturally work with gravity and attaching things, nails, to the wall, you will be able to create something that looks natural on the page. So that's a bit of a help if you're never quite sure where to start with layers. Okay, so the next step I'm going to do is to create some texture in the background, and there are a few ways to do this. You can do it with any sort of painting or inking technique where you're applying ink to the background in an area knowing that you're going to cover a significant amount of that texture up with your embellishment on top. So it might be that you use that same painting technique that I did a couple weeks ago with the plastic wrap and the cling film, and you just take your ink or your watercolor and stamp it on. But obviously that's not going to work very well on my dark paper here. You can also use a stamp that's an image, so you can use a background stamp and stamp it there. Helps to instead of, if you have like a 4x6 background stamp, just don't ink all the way to the edge. Smooth the ink so that it gently fades out at the corners, and then stamp the whole thing, and you'll get softer around the edges rather than this big rectangle on your page that looks a little unnatural. And you can So you can do things with ink like that. You can also do things with mist. You can do actually spraying the mist, or I want to mimic the stars or the circle type star path here with droplets of mist. So I pulled out my gold Color Shine, which I haven't used in a little bit, and the lid is really stuck. So as soon as I get that open, then I'm going to add little mist droplets to these 3 areas. If you want bigger droplets, use a big round paintbrush. But I'm okay with droplets that are roughly the same size as the ones in the pattern paper. And because I have this bigger area marked out with the big strip of washi tape, I'm going to have far more of my ink background technique there. Now, there's also, you can do this step at the end when your embellishment is already on top, and you can add the mist on top of your embellishment. And sometimes I start with it like this, and then if it all gets covered up, I add more. But if you're finding that layering is a challenge, then I suggest doing it first before you put the embellishments on, because it's far less intimidating than taking those embellishments that you've purchased and you only have one each and then dropping paint on top. That can be a little bit frightening. Now also, I went ahead and let a few droplets fit in this kind of empty space of the photo, so they're not on him, but they're in the background. If that's something that just made your skin crawl, make sure you use some paper or your hand to cover up your photos. I go back and forth. Some days I don't really like that idea, and some days I really do. So with these particular pictures, I thought it could be quite nice. Now, when you are adding that ink or mist texture before you add the embellishments on top, you're going to need more than you think, because a lot of it's going to get covered up. So that's why it looks a little mist crazy at this point. Okay, while that's drying, then I'm going to look at paper, and I wanted to show you a few different things that I think about when we are creating paper to share with you with layering. So cut apart sheets are great for layering, especially if they have smaller pieces. So these have larger boxes, like this big 4x6 box, but they also have some smaller pieces like this size and this size. Or this is a small version of a print that comes in a 12x12. So say you wanted to do a 2-page spread, and one page was on that full floral, and then you had this other page opposite it that was maybe on a white background or a pale pink background, and you just wanted a little bit of layering that would bring it together with the page it's going to face in the album. Something like that is perfect. You don't need a whole nother full floral sheet. You'll be able to use these embellishments elsewhere, and that's why we include little things like that, little repeats, so that you can bring it all together. In theory, that's what I hope it will be useful for. So big pieces, and then also there are really small pieces, and this one I use for layering a lot, so it's actually missing quite a bit. But all these little boxes and little labels and borders, they come in really, really handy for layering. And the color scheme is going to give you things that will go together, even though there are not all the same colors. You can see that even with the ones that are cut away, there's a lot of different colors here, but they all have been chosen to work together. So no matter what you choose from this, it should coordinate quite well. So things like that really help me with layering. And no matter what collection, those are the sorts of papers that I go to when I want to cut things apart and layer, because paper is one of the things in scrapbooking where you get the most for your investment. It's not expensive compared to other things. So that piece of paper where I can cut it apart and cut it apart and cut it apart and get layout after layout after layout, to me is really good use of my purchases. Now this is called the Galileo paper. And this is another one that was made with layering in mind. Now, there's a full pattern on the other side, so if full patterns are your thing and small patterns are not, then that's fine. But this side has a variety of different patterns and colors, again, all made to match and all made to match with the patterns that are there. But the patterns here are smaller scale than what you find on the full 12x12, so like this stripe is really little. It's not the same stripe that it would be if I was cutting it down from a 12x12. But you have, with one sheet here, you have all the different colors in the collection and a lot of different patterns that work well with layering. So there's nothing here that's such a bold pattern that you would need a whole lot of it in order to understand what the pattern is. So you have really simple things. You have little crosses, stripes, dots, chevrons, and some stars. Nothing that's complicated. That way you can cut all of these apart. You can just place them underneath here. You could use this to get a little piece that's punched out because you want to bring that green in, but you don't want to cut up a whole sheet of that stripe, for example. Or say what if I wanted to punch some stars or punch some butterflies or punch whatever shape I wanted, and I wanted them to be all in the same color, but a variety of different patterns. Well, look, I could use my big butterfly punch and get one from this box. I could get two from this box. I could get one from that box, and they're all that same green, but they're all different patterns. So that would let me have embellishments that I could scatter all over the page without having to buy all those different sheets of paper. So I hope that it works out useful. So I want to start with bringing in that orange. So I'm going to cut this orange box out straight away so that I know I can use it. And some other pieces from the cut-aparts. So that while these are having their last little bit of drying, I end up with a little bit of paper, a little collection of smaller pieces of paper that I know will fit my colors, my story, and then I can start to piece them together. To give you an idea of the amount of paper that I start with, I have, let's see, two smaller labels, two smaller labels, two bigger strips, and then two bigger pieces. We'll probably need to go and get more, and I'm going to mix up and not have just paper in all of those groups. But that gives me a good start to have kind of two of each thing. I don't particularly want to keep this as a tag. I'd rather just use that pattern and cut it. So I pulled out a star punch, and my large star punch is quite an old one. I don't know how many of you may recognize this older style of star punch, which was by... Oh, what was the name of this company? It's under that label. Quiz. I'm going to figure it out in a second. Anyway, I'm going to punch these into stars. By the way, if we are having a quiz, I didn't take the label off, but I'm pretty sure that these punches were called E-Imagination, like the word imagination, but spelled with an E and not an I. So there you go, if you were playing along with the old supply quiz. There you go. Okay, so now I have this variety of things to put in my groups, and I want to start with the biggest one with my biggest pieces, and so I can allocate things like I'm going to use that one there, or maybe this one there. Now, here is my thought. This piece looks really big if I leave it all as one word. But if I put it up here, it's further removed from the photos, and the reason I chose those words was because this spot was at that point was somewhere he really, really liked to sit and read. So I want the happy place to be more obvious that it's the pictures. So the place in the pictures. So I'm going to separate it into two words, which makes it smaller and easier to fit somewhere else, like this. And then that means I have something left like this one. And at first I might not choose this one to go there because it's pointing that way, and that means in this case it's pointing off into outer space. It's not pointing towards something in the layout. But I can always just cut that edge off and make it a rectangle on this side. So that's okay. And I can have my orange label in this grouping. And then I have my stars. Well, I have 4 stars and 3 groups. So it works best if I have one of each pattern allocated to the larger group. And then I end up with one in this group and one in that group. And the reason I've chosen this one to go higher on the page is because it has more white. So this one is a lighter color, or lighter color weight, if you would. And this one has more orange, so it's darker, it's heavier. So the lighter one up toward the top of the page, like it's floating away like a helium balloon, and the yellow one falling down. Okay. So now I have an idea of all the paper elements that are going to go in each grouping. I then like to look at things that have a slightly different texture. I will get to a step where I'm going to add a hugely different texture, but I'm not there yet. So things that are a slightly different texture than paper are stickers and chipboard. So I have these chipboard phrase stickers, and I can pick out, first of all, I can pick out the fact that I have 3 orange boxes. I've got this one, and this one. So that works perfectly because I can have one for each. There are also things like this navy could work really well to bring a little bit of darker color on top. So I'll keep that one in mind, but I won't take it off just yet. And then I can also look at things like these chipboard pieces, where in a pack I'm going to have small pieces like this that are great for kind of filler in the layering later on, but I want to start with the bigger pieces at this point. So I'd really like to bring in something like this big Make-A-Wish piece and put that in this larger grouping. So we're going to start with that. And when you get to things like chipboard, it's quite often that you'll find something that's going to work with the larger group, but there's nothing that would have that would really fit well in a smaller group. But that's okay. I just pick out the bigger one now, and then when I'm almost finished with each one, I can always go back and say, oh, okay, well, would this little star work well? And that brings the same texture into each group. Okay, so this is enough for me to get started sticking things down. I also want to show you that I tend to keep some washi tape on hand so that as the layers come together, if I end up with any awkward spaces, I can fill them with something really easily. So I picked out one that's orange. That's an orange mini one that was in one of the Amy Tangerine sets. And then this white one with gold stars that I found at my local craft shop. And it wasn't in packaging, so I'm not quite sure who makes it, but it's white with metallic gold stars. Cute. Okay. So I'm going to start with this bigger one here. And I'm going to add a little bit of brown ink just to give this a defined edge, and you really don't need to have this, but as I was gathering things and looking at it on the page, I just knew that I would perhaps like it a little better that way. Now, if you think of that shelf thing, the gold was my shelf, and I've just put something on top of the shelf that is longer than the shelf, but it's all one item. So I can have it hang over a little bit without any problem, but if it wasn't all the way across here, so that imagine it stopped here and it was hanging off the edge a lot, it would look like it was going to tip off the shelf. So keep in mind things like that, and that will help you get your layers in a good spot. And then I wanted those arrows to point up toward the sentiment, so I'm going to add the Make-A-Wish here. And I'm going to use this little label to write a little sentiment that goes along with the Make-A-Wish and adhere it to this grouping. I've added just some really short pop dots to the back, and I want to leave all this color showing so that you get the full color scheme here below the blue. And so in keeping in mind how my layers work, I want to place this at a slight little angle, and maybe I bring it over toward the picture so that I can get this tiny little label piece so that it covers several different layers. So it overlaps the arrows, it overlaps the gold, it overlaps the vellum, it overlaps the photo, and it goes right the way across the white so that the white frame on the photo doesn't accidentally peek out in this little in the little divot at the end. And that makes me quite happy that I can now see that it's a group of embellishments with quite a few layers. And I can bring that orange up somewhere over here. And I like the idea of putting this star also on pop dots so that it matches where this is orange and raised up above the page. This will be orange and raised up above the page as well. I have a couple options with the placement here. I could go ahead and do that same idea. I could place it down here so that it's covering lots of different layers, and that would keep this layered embellishment very compact. I could place it up here so that it's kind of tucked away in these little stars here and overlapping just the chipboard onto this page, or I could bring it out, actually out, not overlapping, so that when I add my other elements here, like the journaling and any further title lettering that I want to add, I can help bring those things all together. I'm going to go with tucking it into these little stars, if I can just get that placement so that the leg of the star goes in that little triangle, but I don't end up with the edge of the chipboard showing in between. And that still may be able to bring my journaling and things into the embellishment, because I've got that little space there that will be great for framing, and I could add journaling that uses this as my horizontal line and just imaginary line that continues across here. And then when I'd start the next line of writing, I would start right into that little divot there so that I can write across, and then it will all feel connected. I'm not going to adhere this one yet, but I'm going to leave it with that grouping so that it's there visually in my mind, and then I'm going to go to my other groupings and repeat these steps. With this grouping, I can just use the elements that I've chosen to try and build. So I need to overlap this one on top of the photo, but I've got enough room there that it's not infringing on its face. And then I can stack this one up above that, and I'm looking at that edge of the photo so that this is just about 1 millimeter higher. And I've got my orange star to repeat here. And so far here I haven't put anything below the gold. So in this case, I think that's where my orange star needs to go. But I don't, normally I would say closer is better, but I don't like how this grouping plays off where the white line gets intersected by the star. So I'm thinking that something else will go there, and I'm going to move the star over to this side, just so it overlaps a little bit with that box, overlaps the gold tape. And then this one at the top is not really easy because I'm just repeating things. I did go ahead and take that arrow off. And here I've got the turquoise box there, so that makes a great way to include another layer of overlapping without it actually being another layer of paper. Now I'm ready to look at a different texture, so I go back to that sticker sheet where I knew I had 3 orange boxes. These 2 to go in these groupings, and I can just start to attach them, and again I'm looking at overlapping other elements that are already there to emphasize the fact that they're layered groupings. Really simple. That gives me a little variety in texture, but not a lot. So I then go to another set of products. Now, there are different things you can use for this step, but what you're looking for is something that changes the texture so that it's not a paper-like texture. So it could be wood veneer, it could be sequins, it could be buttons, it could be gems, it could be pearls, it could be brads. And I'm going to start with some enamel dots, but I might pull in different things to find something that works. So what I'm looking for is just something that's made out of a different material. I liked the idea of bringing in these different, the top and bottom shades of blue, so that I have a little bit of variety. And again, I want to overlap with things that are already there. I'm not going to put one at the bottom here yet because I'm not sure if there needs to be something else there. So I'll wait a moment for that. And the dark blue on that background is a bit of a loss, so that one's going to go over here, but I think, again, it might need something else, so I'll put some light blue over here. I do try not to cover up actual corners. So you can see there's this tiny little bit of the corners left where I've put the dot up. So here I accidentally attached it over the point of the pennant. So I then moved it so that you can still see the very end. Okay, and I'm keeping these out so that I can add a few more when I have everything there. I know it seems silly that I'm continually thinking, oh, there's going to be more, there's going to be more, but if you want to have layered embellishments on your page, that's really how you have to think, is more, 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 more. And it's you are adding lots and lots more things, but you're adding them within a contained space. So that's how you can balance it if your head starts to think, whoa, I've put so much on this page, it might be overwhelming. Well, yes, I keep putting more things, but there's nothing on top of my photos here. You know, his face and the book that he's reading and the surroundings are all very clear. And this photo has a lot of room that I'm not going to take up, so that there won't be anything to distract from his face looking at the camera. And there are many different elements, but they're in a small space. Otherwise, you don't end up with layers. If you only have 1 or 2 elements, or you have 10 elements, but they're all spread out, you don't have layers. So if you want to do layering, you've got to do more and more, but in a confined space. I spent a few minutes looking and thinking about whether I wanted to add a journaling card in this space to have another paper element and do my writing on that. If I wanted to create some lines just here, maybe with a stamp or just with a pen. And instead I'm going to try going ahead and just writing directly onto the layers of the background, so that part of the time I'm going to be writing on this pattern paper and part of the time on the vellum. But what I need to do in that case is to check the particular pen I'm using on the vellum to make sure that it will write and not instantly roll away or bead up or anything like that, and this works fine. Okay, so both words in the large letters were not going to fit and was going to be a bit heavy anyway, so I used this opportunity to place the K so that it's in this little spot here, with the S lower, so that I have that ascending letter where there's more height, but then the descending here. It does mean that these are quite open, but that's okay for me. And then ran the first word to the left of that. But now I have this open space here. So that's the reason I end up with things like this being really, really handy, because I can instantly fill those little gaps by using simple little strips of tape. Of course, there are other options, like I could have used the larger tape to run a whole strip here and then put my letter stickers over the top. That works too. And then it's nice to have some balance, so I'm going to bring a little bit of this orange underneath the larger word in the title. So I've added 1 there, 3 here. This is quite messy, and I'd like to add something on top so that it's not quite so messy, but that's okay. I have my chipboard to return to with some smaller pieces, and I have my enamel dots to return to. So in this grouping, did I really just have that 1 light blue? Yeah. So I definitely need at least a light blue there. Maybe I just do 3 light blue in this grouping. 1, 2, 3. And then use the blue, darker blue ones up here. I think that's enough because I do actually have 3 there. And like some other element here, so let me go back to my paper, my chipboard. What could I put in there? Ah, that one that I used as an example earlier actually is a good fit. So I'm moving that until it's covering as many different layers as possible. So this tiny little bit of the star is overlapping that. It's overlapping the vellum and 2 pieces of tape. Cool. It even has a little gold dot from the mist peeking out behind. And I think it might be good to bring these little gold stars and go to the places in the design of the pattern papers and find where there are lots of little stars already and add those little yellow chipboard stars. So now now that I've added more and more, I have this grouping that's much larger. I have this one that's kind of medium sized and this one that's much smaller and lighter, and that works particularly well. I also have this one left to come back to. I think this one could actually work well flat because I've now got lots of things up next to it that are raised. Might move this dot over because this star is going on that angle, so it'd be nice to have just a little bit of angle over here. That's another thing though to keep in mind, that if layering is starting to you set up a set of layers and it feels a little messy to you, straighten things up a little bit. The angles that I use are really small so that nothing grabs your attention so much to go, oh, that's tilting. And you want just a tiny little bit of natural movement rather than something being, oh, this is on an angle. And when I first started scrapbooking, you would spend all this time, like pretend this is the photo, and you would go straight or on an angle, straight or on an angle. And the thing is that we were doing because those were the two options that we felt like we had in our design, we would really exaggerate it. So it would either be straight up and down, like I used a spirit level and a ruler to make sure it was straight, or I would go like really big angle like that. And if it's at a really big angle like that, whether it's the photo, the embellishment, the writing, your head is naturally going to tilt as it looks at the page to try and even up the angle. So unless you're doing something where the whole page has this obvious angle and you've done everything that's actually like you've really done a design like this, but you've just taken it and shifted it on a big angle and then put that on a 12 by 12. Unless you've done something dramatic like that where everything's on an angle, keep the angles really small and that will help with your layers. Now this is another point where if you came back to the groups, you could add your mist or any ink or anything like that at this point, and this is a great time to use really small stamps and come into these little places and add a little word or a little shape or anything like that to give it a bit more finish. But because I'm using that dark paper and I've already added gold, I don't think that I'm going to get much more from the stamping. So this is a good place for me to stop on this particular set of layers. And of course, there will be many layers on future pages to come. Now, if you have some layering that you'd like to share with us, or if you have a question for Glitter Girl, I would love for you to stop by our Facebook group where we chat about all these things. It's called Scrapbook Like a Superhero, and you can find a link below the video. Or you can stop by Shimelle.com to find the sign up page for the newest class, a nice new live class, brand new, never discussed before, that you can find the first details of today. It starts very soon and you can sign up now. Thanks so much for watching.